welcome in to the newest edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast. And it just so happens to be the first edition that we are doing here in the regular season. So MLB season has kicked off. My favorite team is just quickly settling into, seems like right where they belong. Unfortunately, Matt's team record-wise is the same, but because of the division, they may be faring a little bit better just in terms of the rankings overall. But nonetheless, the season has started. I've already gotten screwed on player props. I have my awesome fantasy teams not doing well. So I'm glad to say I am glad the regular season is here. Super excited. So I'm Colby Conway. With me, as always, is Matt Selz on Twitter at the Selzman. So Matt, how is everything going for you, my friend?
About the same. I was glad to see the start from Mackenzie Gores on Sunday for the Nats. I was not happy to see the start from Josiah Gray on Saturday for the Nats. Something's not working there. He thought he had something figured out in spring training, but apparently that's against Double-A hitters. So, I'm not expecting much from the Nats this year. Obviously, just hoping to see improvement with some of our young guys there. And if anybody on my fantasy team wants to hit home runs other than Aaron Judge, that would be mighty helpful. Trey Turner, come on, man.
It's just how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
But the big thing is
it's early. Don't be dropping anybody because they didn't hit a home run in the first 4 days. Like we're saying this tongue in cheek, right? It's a marathon. Everybody should be where they're, where we hope them to be at the end of the season. Yep,
absolutely. And just there's no need to overreact right now. I'm all for improving your team, but you got to take some things with stride. We're 3 days in or 4 days in, depending when you're listening to, maybe even 5 days in. There's a lot's going to happen. So let's not overreact. Let's kind of take it in stride. You mentioned that you were excited for the Mackenzie Gores start. I am right there with you. Excited to see how good he looked. But I can tell you one team that isn't happy with some of the starters. That's got to be the Mets. They just continue. There is something with that jersey that just leads to unfortunate injury. So Justin Verlander, the latest Mets arm to go to the IL, the teres majors popped up again. So it sounds like, based on the report, that he's going to be reevaluated in about a week or so from when the injury happened, but he's going to continue throwing. So interesting that there's not a full shutdown. My first thought is maybe it's because, now as I say this out loud, you can take it the other way with a double-edged sword. Maybe because he's older, that he kind of has a better idea of what to do, and he just does. Maybe it's happened before per se, and he can just handle it better. It's just really weird to say, yeah, they're older, so we're gonna get them back sooner. Typically, doesn't work that way. But what do you think is going to happen here with Verlander? Like, there's no real concrete timeline. It seems like once he gets reevaluated, we'll have a better idea. But the fact that he's still throwing was something that caught me off guard at first.
Agreed. And the report I saw said he'd be throwing with moderate intensity, which made me chuckle a little bit because it's Verlander, right? When does he ever do anything not intense? But yeah, that was interesting to me because the Braves, it was the Braves guy, right, that went down with the same.
No, Mackenzie with Cleveland.
Oh, Tristan McKenzie. Sorry, yes, with Cleveland. There's been so many pitchers injured that I can't keep them straight. But the fact that he shut down for almost 2 months, and yet Verlander is going to keep throwing. I mean, I guess there are different grades of this because it is a muscle issue. But at this point, I find it hard to believe that the Mets know what they're doing to keep people healthy. Because last year, Scherzer went down with an injury he's never had in his career, and we're talking like a 15-year major league career. The guy's never strained a left oblique, and yet he did it in his first year with the Mets, right? Now you get Verlander coming off a year after Tommy John wins the American League Cy Young Award and then goes to the Mets and doesn't even make a start. He was put on the IL before opening day. It's not like he was their opening day starter. So I don't know. Hopefully he's back sooner rather than later for all of you who drafted him. But it was very interesting to me that they said he would keep throwing, even though it was serious enough to put him on the 15-day.
Yeah. And they said all that's clear now is that the right-hander is going to miss at least 2 starts. Doctors have cleared him to continue throwing. So,
yeah.
I think we're both in agreement that he'll be back before Mackenzie at this point, just by the mere fact he's throwing the ball still.
I mean, Mackenzie, they said basically 2 months. And
yeah. So I guess
that timeline never got that far.
Right. So I guess ultimately the correct answer to Tyler McGill or David Peterson was both.
Yeah, although I think Peterson has a longer run in the rotation than
I do too. But at least a couple starts. McGill will at least be in there for a couple starts.
Because Quintana's still out for at least 3 months. Right?
Yeah, he's gone. While we're talking about the Mets, quick thing. One word to describe Kodai Senga's opening start.
I don't know. I mean, did we really what did we expect from him in his first start? Like, what did you go in thinking he was going to do?
More of innings 2 through 5 than inning 1.
I mean,
now I know this is not our same old Marlins team. Like looking at the strikeout props against them, like I was fortunate opening day for Scherzer to get the 6. Like they've added a ton of contact to that lineup. So picking against the Marlins, like last year the cheat code was Marlins strikeouts. Now it seems this year that's going to be Detroit. That's what it seems like it's going to be for 2023. But Senga looked good after inning 1.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. So I would consider Senga to be a power pitcher, right? Like he's got velo. His stuff is pretty nasty. It's not like he's your normal, low 90s third starter, right? So I will say that typically with those guys, you can get to them in the first inning, right? That's always been the thing with Scherzer is like if you can jump on him in the first inning, you can get him reeling a little bit. If you let him settle in, then he becomes next to impossible to hit, which is what happened as Senga continued. I'm sure Mets fans are reeling in the fact that Senga had a far better outing than Jacob deGrom did in his first one with the Rangers, which was, let's put it this way, opening day to have deGrom and Nola on the mound and both guys don't even make it out of the 4th and it's like 10 total runs on the board. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
DeGrom and Nola games are typically not easy overs.
No, not usually. You're talking about two dudes who, I mean, one of them has 2 Cy Youngs, and the other one is seemingly vying for a Cy Young basically every year. So that's tough company. But look, it was a good first dip into the majors for Senga. I think it came against a reasonably fair lineup for him to face. It's not like it was, the Braves who are expected to be one of the better offenses in the NL. It's not like it was the crosstown Yanks or, whatnot. The Marlins offense is better, but when you're where they were last year, better is always good, but not yet to the top of the board. So I think it was fair. We'll see how he reacts to shorter days off in the majors, and also the fact that there's not Justin Verlander anchoring in front of him with Scherzer. So we'll see how that goes as it continues. But I think it was a solid enough.
Yep. I'm right there with you. I think it was nasty after inning 1. Definitely much improved there. But another Cy Young winner went down. Robbie Ray is heading to the injured list. Actually, he's already on the injured list with a left flexor strain. Flexor forearm. Don't like hearing those words. Obviously didn't look normal in the start. Then the news came out. Makes a little sense. So what do we make of Robbie Ray here? If you're in a league that does not have IL spots, can you hold Ray for the time being?
So the timeline, according to the Mariners, the last one I've seen, is that he should be back in 4 to 6 weeks, right? They're going to shut him down for 2 weeks, and they're going to reevaluate, and then, try to get him back 4 to 6 weeks. Because after that, he'll need a couple of starts to, build back up, get the feel of things. We'll see. I am comforted in the fact that it's a grade 1 strain. So it seems like the more mild variety, even though it's, a strain that we don't often like to hear, flexor, is not usually good for a pitcher. So I'm holding him for right now, right? Like that's the only thing you can do. Because let's say he comes back healthy and he's fine. You've just let a really good pitcher go. And it's not like there's anybody pressing on the. Now, maybe if you're in a shallow league, in terms of like maybe 8 or 10 teams, and maybe there are some other dudes, but I'm still holding Robbie Ray in that scenario.
Yep, I'm right there with you too. There was a question in Discord asking about it, and ultimately it was like, if you have the fortune to hold on to him, I am holding on to him because as we've seen, it's very rare throughout the season. You'll get a couple guys in free agency that you can pick up off the waiver wire that pop off. When Ray comes back, I do have my issues with Ray in terms of him on the mound and stuff, and what sometimes he does a little bit too much and other stuff he doesn't do enough of. Right. But he's too much of an impact arm to just let go. If it was past 4 to 6 weeks, you could start selling me on it. But I think this 4 to 6, I'm with you. I think you got to hold. I just think
it's not like there's a Spencer Strider coming off the free agent list. Right?
There's no guarantee of that. That is for sure. What about in Atlanta with Max Fried hamstring on opening day? When I watched it, it didn't look like anything. Now that's from me saying that sitting on my couch. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm sitting on my couch with my legs propped up and a beer in my hand, so I'm not exactly in the most active position myself. But I'm watching. I'm like, I didn't notice anything. And then he was just kind of slow after moving away from first base. So not a lot has really come out about him per se. This seems like maybe the 2 week, maybe only 3. I don't think he'll be on there too long. I don't think he'll miss more than a handful of starts.
Correct. Yeah, I watched it live. And to be honest, the replay, they had to go find the replay to see why the trainer had come out, because watching in real time, you couldn't really see. Like, I was watching the Nats broadcast and they were saying, well, maybe he stopped and started because the first baseman kind of faked whether he was going to throw it or take it to the bag or whatever, but that wasn't the case. And then the only real hint was that you could see him wince when his back was to home plate at first base. You could see him wince a little bit, but it wasn't like a noticeable, like he never reached down to his hammy to grab it like you normally see, right? So they did say he's going to wind up on the IL. It's probably like there's basically no way around it, right? You can't just have him skip a start and eat a roster spot for 10 days to let it heal. So I would be shocked if he's on there for much more than the minimum, unless it's a worse hamstring thing than we are assuming. But then I would have assumed the reaction would have been more severe, right?
Yep. I'm right there with you. What about Joe Musgrove worked up to about 5 innings here? So it seems like he's on his way back. Is he shaping up to be, when the news came out with the toe issue that he had, he fell quite a bit in drafts. Is Musgrove shaping up to end up being the steal at basically how far he fell in certain drafts, given that it seems like if he's up to 5 innings, his return can't be too terribly far away?
Yeah, I mean, he broke the toe in late February, right? And they put a 4 to 6 week timeline on him at that point. 6 weeks puts it to mid-April, right? And if he's already up to 5 innings, that's basically what you expect from your starter for the first start of the year, coming off of spring training and whatever. So I think we're going to miss maybe one more start from Joe Musgrove. Maybe, and then you'll get him back, and assuming he stays healthy the rest of the way, then yeah, I don't see anything. By the way, there's a tweet that I'm just now seeing from the San Diego sports radio station where they're interviewing Musgrove, who says he's hoping for an April 6th return date.
Okay.
Which would be 3 days from when we're recording this on Monday, April 3rd. So April 6th would be 3 days from Thursday. So maybe one trip through the rotation you miss.
Make him quite the steal. Because I know he fell a good bit. Like in the TGFBI draft I did, he slept a lot.
Yeah.
Because of that news.
It's gonna be, I don't see why it would be much longer than that. If he's already up to, and by the way, I mean, obviously it's not a full MLB game, but he threw 5 innings on 71 pitches, which is reasonably efficient.
Yeah, and I mean, say he's targeting that April 6th return. Let's just say April 6th he ends up throwing one more, whether it's a minor league or in a rehab center or something. Say 5 days from there, we're only talking April 11th. We're close. Musgrove's coming back soon.
Right.
He's turning out early on to be quite a draft steal.
Perfectly honest, I'd rather he skips the April 6th start because it's against Atlanta. So if you have him, you're hoping that he avoids that weekend series, just because I'd rather get the better offensive matchup from him. To be perfectly honest, if we have a fantasy viewpoint of it, him pitching against Atlanta, I'd rather hope for an easier offense for the first time out.
5 days from that April 6th, or I should say actually 5 games. So if we're saying that's going to be Musgrove, so we'll say the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, it'd be the Mets that following time back.
Yeah, so it doesn't get any easier. Okay.
No, but you'll take him back at that point. You might as well just get him in there.
Without Darren Ruff now, so there you go. You got a little easier, right?
Yeah, good one. Good one. Anthony Rendon held out over the weekend with a knee issue. Also tried to fight a fan in the stands.
Yes.
The knee should be considered minor. Shouldn't really anything be too worried about. If he does get suspended for that, I mean, what do you think it ends up being? 3 games? He appeals it and gets it down to 1 or 2. Like, he swiped. He didn't really punch, but I mean, it's kind of, neither is great in terms of a player to a fan. I can't see him getting more than a handful of games, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I saw that. I thought it was bad form, but you also can't just allow these fans to, run roughshod over the players. At some point, they have to have some decency and treat people, like humans. Now, I will say on behalf of the fan, it was probably a bad move I know nobody wants to get hit, but it was a bad move to move and not get hit, because if you really wanted to prove that you disliked Anthony Rendon, what better way than to take a slap and then you get to sue him for money and he gets suspended for a lot longer? Not encouraging violence here by any means. I'm just saying that, if the ban really wanted to prove, to teach Rendon a lesson, he would have just stood there and taken the slap.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think it'll be too long of a suspension. I'll have to see. I know that MLB, no one's going to comment on it. Rendon's not going to say anything about it right now. It's going to be ho-hum. And I guess the only, if he gets suspended 2 or 3 games, that's an extra 2 or 3 days to let his knee heal, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's silver linings look at it. But he, if I'm not mistaken, he hasn't been all that great to the start of the season, especially after a pretty impressive spring, numbers-wise.
No, it was people were making fun of him for missing the slap because it was another swing and miss for Rendon. By the way, I know this is a couple days old, but apparently Boone said that the Yankees are working on a potential deal to add a pitcher. Hey, you want to see if St. Louis will take Harrison Bader back for Jordan Montgomery that the Yankees shouldn't have given up in the first place?
Well, maybe what they're going to do is offer Johnny Brito and Clark Schmidt, trade 2 pitchers for 1 pitcher.
Yeah, that'll be a Brian Cashman move.
That'll show the league.
I swear to God, if they include a pitching prospect in a deal for a major league pitcher, Cashman better be out the door alongside him. Like, it's just, I know that they're hard hit by injuries at this point, but it's also comical that they made a deal for an injured defensive outfielder that they didn't need in the first place and gave up their only quality uninjured starter who didn't cost $300 million.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see what happens there if the Yankees do make a move, what pitchers they trade for pitchers, because obviously they believe pitching is a position of depth for them. So they'll be looking forward to trading from that to definitely bolster their pitching staff. Just imagine saying that we're going to trade our pitchers because we need pitching help to get a pitcher. Like, the more you say it, the dumber it sounds.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me.
It's just comical at this point.
It is. But let's talk little closers here. First off, if you haven't already, the closer grid or the closer chart, whatever you want to call it, on Fantasy Alarm should be bookmarked. You should have it saved. You should have the URL memorized off the top of your head. We're 4 days into the season, and you are going to need this thing. Like, we saw Ryan Presley didn't look good. Apparently, he's been out with an illness, so he hasn't been available. Daniel Bard is on the injured list with some anxiety issues that he's going through. So we now have Pierce Johnson, AJ Puck, Reynaldo Lopez, Texas's Will Smith, and Oakland's Danny Jimenez as closers. I mean, I understand the 9th inning is going to be fluid for many teams, but I mean, good Lord, we're 4 days into the season, Matt. 4 days, and I'm already in closer hell in all these leagues.
Yep. I'm there with you. This is also, by the way, for the last several years, why I have decided to not necessarily punt saves, but I don't spend top dollar on guys that we all think are locked in closers, because there are guys in my home league that went for $5 to $10 and $100 budget that have already lost their job. Like Ryan Presley went for like $11. He may not close. Like, I'm sure he probably gets the job back, but who knows what this illness is? And who knows if it's going to be, if it's just a one-time thing, or if it's going to crop up, or, whatnot. The Daniel Bard thing, I'm not sure he was really being counted on for. I mean, I know he was a pretty good closer last year, but, this is why I just go for the next guy who could be up, because you never know. Like Dylan Floro doesn't seem like he's the closer in Miami. We kind of expected him to do that. And, I don't feel like we really know very much about most of these teams back into their bullpen at this point. So I have a feeling this is going to become a recurring segment where we have to tell you who the flavor of the week is in the bullpen.
I think so too. I would say, I think my general advice would be, if you are going to look to get the Cleveland closer, I would be getting Pierce Johnson. I would not be taking a ride on the Nelson Lamet train.
Nope.
There are many things in life that say volatility and that'll tell you volatility, and you should know it. There are very few things that absolutely from the mountaintops scream volatility. And Lamet in high leverage innings, particularly the ninth inning when your fantasy team depends on it, is one of those few things to my eye. So I'm looking at Pierce Johnson. I think he's the guy that's going to get, I won't say he's going to get all of the save opportunities while Bard's out, but for Colorado's sake, he should get the majority of them. However, as we all know, Colorado will Colorado, whatever that ends up meaning in the ninth inning. But for me, Johnson's the preferred target of mine, if available, out there in your leagues.
Correct. I'm with you on that. I also like grabbing Will Smith while he's available.
I do too. There was a question in our Discord about it, which if you're not in the Discord, make sure you get in there. I believe it's promo code Howard, I think is what I remember seeing from the tweets. That gets you in the Discord and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that's right. It's all over Twitter. Go check out Howard's Twitter at RotoBuzzGuy, and the deal should be mentioned there. But
yeah, now I do want to talk about the White Sox though with Ronaldo Lopez.
Okay, one thing I will mention quick with Smith though, we'll have to see. I do think he's in the mix for save opportunities, but this one he got the save. 2 of the 3 hitters were lefties.
Yeah,
and the 8th inning was 2 righties. So that could. I'm not saying that that's the only reason he got it, but that is something that I want to monitor moving forward to see if they are truly playing matchups or if Smith is the guy.
That's fair.
But what about in Chicago? Because I was very big on Ronaldo Lopez coming into the year.
Yeah. How do you think it shapes out when Liam Hendricks is back?
Hendricks.
Because all reports out of Chicago are that he might be back in May.
Hendricks.
Yeah, sorry. What did I say?
You said Hendricks. Yeah, you said when Hendricks comes back, how are things going to play out?
Sorry,
so yeah. No, you're right, and I'll be right. It's going to be Hendricks.
I said his last name wrong.
No. I think Hendricks, once he returns, it might be, I don't remember who we talked about it a week or two ago, but it may be, he starts with like a 7th inning appearance,
right,
and then maybe a 9th inning in a game where they're up or down 7. And then after that, if he comes in, goes 2 innings, 4 strikeouts, no walks, he's there not every day 9th inning guy, but every save opportunity 9th inning guy.
Right, because here's the thing. They did not put him on the 60-day IL.
And all reports are that he's progressing well, all things considered.
He's progressing well, which is great news just for his health. Like, I honestly comes back and closes, great. I don't actually have any shares of Liam Hendricks. His health is really all that matters, but he's progressing well. They expect him to be back in mid-May. So I just think if he's there and you have an IL spot or you took a shot on him, I still think there's value there for him for about half a season worth of saves and what should be a very competitive White Sox lineup.
There is enough thump and they have enough horses in the rotation that they can keep games close and they can win. Now, if your league does save and holds, or maybe holds its own category, even upon Hendricks' return, I do think Lopez is going to have some standalone value. I think he's going to be fine. He can miss bats and he'll get holds and stuff. You just may not get as much help as saves as you will from, the beginning of the season until Hendricks' impending return.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of the White Sox, what did you think of Cease's first start?
Let me look back. Let me look back at the numbers. Let me see what the
numbers had. It was a very good start to the game, and then I feel like he ran out of gas.
6 1/3, 2 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts. So, I mean, strikeouts are good. Maybe all the bust articles I put him in this offseason stuff didn't really fare too well with him if you happen to see him. So maybe that could be part of it. I mean, it's the thing with Cease is the strikeouts are pretty much always going to be there. Even if he goes 4 1/3 with 7 walks, 6 earned runs, he's probably going to strike out 8 batters doing so. So the strikeouts are always going to be there. He's going to have to harness the command. He did in this first start. It's going to take more than a couple of starts for me to rescind that. I still don't think he matches what he does. I think that first start was impressive, but he is not matching what he did last year. I'm still very
I also think that he was not as efficient as he could have been. Now he pitched 86 pitches, right? Which in 6 1/3 is impressive. But watching the game, there was a lot of deep counts to get those strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if he's willing to give up a little bit more contact and trust his defense, which is pretty good defensively, they have a pretty good defensive team. I think he might be a little bit more efficient with his approach. So all of those who, tried the victory lap one start from Cease, if you look back last year, there was a lot of really good one-off starts. And then he blew up like 2 starts later with like 7 walks, right? So, we'll see what happens with the control. Maybe that's great. But my other concern is, is Ethan Katz working with Dylan Cease so much that the rest of the starters suck? Because that seemed to be the case last year. Is like Dylan Cease looked awesome, but Giolito was terrible. Lance Lynn was terrible. They had to DFA Dallas Keuchel because he could not be saved for his life. Ronaldo Lopez failed so much that they're now trying him as a 1-inning reliever. So that's my only thing is Cease's upside taking away from the rest of that rotation.
Yep. Something to watch for sure. So early season trends that we're seeing here, Matt, at the beginning. So first off, we've completed 4 days into the season. Obviously, there was a whole bunch of talk this offseason about the new rules, what everything like that was going to look like. So 4 games through, we've cut off over 45 minutes in games. I lied.
About 30.
I cut off 30 minutes. My math's off. About 30 or so minutes off. Batting average is up 15 points. On base is up 15 points. Slugging is up about 18 points. Pitch clock violations less than 1 per game. So everybody who was worried about that affecting the game, less than once. So okay, take that, whatever you will with that. Big thing is stolen bases, almost double the attempts, but the success rate is absolutely through the roof through the first 4 days. Yep. 70 for 84 on the base paths for attempted base stealers. So to me, we kind of talked about this a little bit before we jumped on here, but all of that, all positive, no negative in my eyes.
Correct. I am loving this. We get more action. And by the way, those of you who are like, well, okay, there's better batting average. Yeah, most of it's on singles. So it's just dudes getting on base. It's not like it's a true 3 true outcome baseball like we've been subjected to for the last, 6 years. I will say the teams are starting to get creative with the shift rules. I haven't seen anybody do the 2 outfield thing, but I did see the Braves put Orlando Arcia about as physically close to the middle of second base as humanly possible during their series with the Nats, right? Like the shortstop's not allowed to be on the left side or the right side of second base, right? Orlando Arcia was about as close to the middle of second base as you can possibly get now. So I think you'll see a fair amount of that going forward, that it won't be like as severe of a shift. But look, if we're getting games done in 2.5 hours, And it's not like they're hurting for offense. How many like 10-run games did we see this weekend? There was a ton of offense this weekend. It's more enjoyable. The pitch clock, to be honest, like when I first saw it in spring training, I was like, this is quick, right? But now that regular season is here, I feel like it's not like lightning fast. I feel like it's just going at a proper pace, right? Guys on first means there's more running chances, there's more RBI, there's more action for the for the pitcher to worry about. And also, not to mention, by the way, if there's more singles, that means the pitch clock's in 20-second mode more often than 15-second mode. So there is that little wrinkle there. I love it. I love what I'm seeing. We'll see what happens in extra innings. We used to have that ghost runner and pitch clock combined. We'll see what happens there. But I have to say, as a lifelong fan of baseball, I love what I'm seeing. There are plenty of people I've seen in these Twitter replies and whatnot that are like, I gave up on baseball. I'm coming back to it, and I like what I see. So growing the sport, always a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. I'm right there with you. And it's one of those things too. We were kind of going to see, like, with the stolen base rules, is everybody going to start stealing now? And ultimately, I think what we're going to see is the guys who are fast and who are going to run are going to continue to run. Correct. Guys that are slow that don't run, they're not going to run. You know what I mean? They're just not as likely to do so. Now, what it does open up the door for those pitchers who couldn't hold runners on to begin with, looking at you, Noah Syndergaard, you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look at Corbin Carroll. I understand the guy runs like a 2.740, so I understand how fast the guy is. I mean, Syndergaard doesn't stand a chance, and God forbid he does the 2 disengagements or whatever. Once Carroll knows, in this case, I mean, you can't stop it.
So that's the only thing that I may want to tweak,
because that happened with Acuna, right? He looked at from what my understanding was, looked at the ump. He can't throw over, right? Nope. And Acuna's like, well, here we go.
Yeah, that lead got like 4 times larger, and there's basically nothing. Now, it's not necessarily a fully true statement to say there's nothing the pitcher could do about it. If you throw over for a third time,
you have to get them,
and you pick the guy off, it stays as a pickoff. However, if you don't, you just gave up a free 90 feet. The guy doesn't even have to run. It's a balk. So he just gets to walk over there on his own time, right? So we'll see. I think there's a couple of wrinkles to be worked out with the pitch clock and when it starts, because we did see some times where the pitcher took too long to come out of the bullpen or whatever and started with a 1-0 count. But it is what it is. So yeah, some pitchers who don't throw over are going to be in a world of hurt. But look, it's better for the fans, right? Like, after all, we do need some entertainment value, and just watching dudes throw over 7 times because Acuna's on base or Chisholm's on base or Trey Turner's on base or Corbin Carroll's on base isn't necessarily all that fun. But I will say, if they could get like, it's not like it's 2 for the whole inning. It's 2 per at bat, right? So if you throw over there and then you get the guy out, now you've reset it. So we'll see how that plays out going forward, I guess.
I talked about it earlier. Last year, picking on Miami seemed to be the way to go. And looking at it this year through the first couple of games, 4 teams have above a 29% strikeout rate. We're looking at the Giants, the Brewers, still the Marlins, and the Tigers. In the opening 4 days of the season, though, the Tigers are hitting 147 with a 29.7% strikeout rate and a 15 WRC plus. Now, to their credit,
horrible.
Well, yeah, it is horrible. To their credit, they did go up against McClanahan. They went up against Eflin. They went up against Springs.
Okay, but I wouldn't consider Eflin to be a massive strikeout guy.
No, but Springs and McClanahan, I would. Well yeah, Springs is looking like one.
Sure. But we'll see what maybe Springs got a few extras because he was like, but this lineup right now for the Tigers is gross. I mean, Javi Baez would strike out 40% of the time if you let him, right? And Torkelson at this point has been basically a bust for a number 1 overall pick, he can't seem to find a bat and figure out how to use it all that well. Nick made there are just a bunch of cast-offs in Detroit right now. I don't know what their approach was this year. I don't know if they're just waiting for some of their prospects to come up, which, by the way, it's not like they're fully loaded with huge prospects to begin with overall. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean to the Tigers, but in general, if you look over their prospect list, it's not all that intimidating. So I don't know what I don't know if they're just going broke, they don't want to spend money, but this lineup is, it's going to be picked on all the time, to the point where DK may be forced to have like a 5th starter for a bad team be jacked up in price because you're going to get a bunch of free strikeouts.
Yep, and against lefties in particular, and of course it was McClanahan Springs that they happened to see a left-handed reliever. More specifically, we're looking at a 36.8% strikeout rate for the Tigers with a 10 WRC plus and a 183 WOBA.
Yeah, by the way, for those of you who are unsure of what WRC plus is, it basically measures your ability to score runs and how effective you are offensively. 100 is league average.
And they're 10.
They're 10. And at best, they're 15.
Yep. That is, they're going to be a fun team to pick on.
Yeah, it's just sad, to be perfectly. Like, in some ways, I feel kind of awesome because it's like redemption for AJ Hinch to have to deal with terrible offense after leading a cheating scandal. But I also just feel bad for the baseball fans in Detroit, which has a rich baseball history, that this is how Miggy's going out and this is what you have to put up with.
Not ideal.
No.
Not ideal. Now, let me ask you about this. In Pittsburgh, one thing I was interested coming into the year was what were they going to do with O'Neal Cruz and left-handers? So we've had a little bit of a very small sample size, but what we've basically seen is he's going to lead off against righties, and then he's going to drop down to 6th against lefties. He's in the lineup, so that's good. So the people who were not drafting Cruz because of him not going to face lefties, even if he sucks against lefties, they're going to play him at least the first couple months of the season just to let him try to figure it out. But additionally, when they do face a lefty, the one time we've seen it so far, Ke'Bryan Hayes moved up to the leadoff spot. So interesting what Pittsburgh is doing here. I still think it's wild that against a left-hander, they're still going to not bat Cruz in like the top 4 or even 5. I get it. He's not good against lefties at all. But I really like Ke'Bryan Hayes moving up to leadoff against lefties because I do think at some point when they face righties, they cannot have Kanan Smith and Jigba and G-Man Choi hitting against him or hitting before him in this lineup. It's malpractice to do that.
Correct.
So
I don't understand
you got to like it for
Hayes
Hayes.
is that low against righties. It doesn't seem like that's good for anybody, to be honest. But I do like that O'Neal Cruz is still in the lineup against lefties. Like, sure, would you like to see him in the top half of the lineup? Yeah, for fantasy purposes, obviously there's more run production value higher up in a lineup. But you could just be like Jock Peterson, who takes the day off against lefties.
Right.
Which doesn't really help anybody, doesn't really help anybody for the fantasy team. So, yeah, I mean, I like to see O'Neal Cruz in there. I think his issue is that he's just so damn tall. It takes a while to get everything working, and then you throw in a guy who's just going to work him just inside and outside, just going to find all of his weaknesses. So whether he ever figures out how to hit lefties, I don't know. But still having him in there gets you some fantasy value.
And if there's any, I mean, yes, he was horrible against lefties last year. I mean, technically against Lodolo, he did have 2 singles, although I believe one was more reminiscent of like a swinging bunt. So maybe we'll throw that one out. But again, in the lineup, that's all that you can matter. And then another lineup thing that I noticed here, Spencer Steer, I believe he's in one of your deepest fantasy leagues in America. I believe he is on that team. Hit 7th on opening day, hit 7th in the team's 3rd game of the year. But when a lefty went on the mound, he moved up to 2nd, sandwiched in between Indy and Myers.
He's also, by the way, hitting 2nd in today's game for the Reds on Monday against the Cubs.
A lefty's throwing, right?
I think so.
Is it Smiley?
Let me double check who's pitching for the Cubs today.
But regardless, this is a really nice development for anybody who did draft Steer. Because if you were expecting, well, he'll be in the bottom 3rd and he'll move his way up throughout the year. We're already in the beginning of the year and he's in the top 3rd against lefties. Like, that's a big, big, big development for a guy who does have immense power.
Yeah, it is Drew Smiley on the mound for the Cubs today for his first start of the year, which would be why Steer is hitting 2nd. Now, I will say, if you're in an OBP league right now, you're loving Spencer Steer even more because he's got a .417 on base percentage at the moment. Yes, 3-4 games into the season. That's a very small sample size. But he is walking a pretty decent amount. He does have pop. So it's a nice development. You know, would I like to see him scooch up in the lineup against righties? Yeah, that'd be better because obviously you're going to get less lefties that you're facing than righties. But in general, I'm happy with the fact that he's hitting 2nd, a young 3rd baseman. He seems to be the everyday option at this point. I think they're going to let some of their younger guys season a little bit more, which would make sense to me. If I'm Cincinnati, there's no reason to force those guys up at this point for a season that you're clearly not competing. I mean, just look at the rotation. You're not competing this year, given that rotation. So yeah, if he's for some reason available, I would go scoop him up. I doubt that he is available, but yes, for those of us who drafted him, it's a very, very nice development.
And Matt, we'll wrap up this episode. We'll just kind of throw this over to you. What was the most impressive thing that you saw from opening day weekend? Or the opening weekend, I should say.
There's a lot to choose from. I mean, the simple answer would be the Hunter Renfroe catch, where he basically ran the wrong route to the ball and still caught it. Was pretty impressive. Also impressed Shohei Ohtani, which then he pretended not to know Anthony Rendon when he was fighting the fan. But I would say overall is the crowds, man. Those were some full ballparks. Around, like even Oakland had a really good crowd for the game, which was impressive. Now, whether they showed up to come see Ohtani and Trout and pick on Rendon and whatever, still bought tickets. There were still an awful lot of people in green in Oakland. So I would say the crowds in general, like Texas had a packed house for that game. I know it was DeGrom and whatnot, but like everywhere seemed to have a pretty solid opening day crowd. The Nats probably not so much, but I would say the way the games have played out and the crowds were pretty impressive.
Yep. The Renfroe catch was pretty insane. For me, I think the most impressive thing I saw, I know it was against Detroit, but Shane McClanahan looks poised to win the AL Cy Young.
I think I picked him in my bold predictions to win the AL Cy Young, if I'm not mistaken.
I did, for sure. I know I did. So, yeah, McClanahan looked filthy. I can't wait for his next start against not Detroit. Just want to see. And then, obviously, on top of that, you couldn't have asked for more from Jeffrey Springs in his first start. Like, this was like the quintessential, what he did in spring was excellent. Can he do it in the regular season to come out and do what he did? Filthy. McClanahan still wins AL Cy Young, but what Springs did against Detroit was quite impressive as well. So
yeah, I would agree. What was your least favorite thing about opening day weekend?
Probably that the Pirates only won one game.
Okay. But were you expecting more?
Yeah, obviously. What kind of question is that?
Were you hoping for more?
Yeah, the answer remains. I was hoping and expecting more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, hold on. Okay, I got a good one. I know this won't change because I know by rule it's technically not the same. I am so sick of walks not counting towards total bases for player props. I am just I lost money on it last year. We're 3 days in. I've lost money on it again this year. I understand why. I get it, but I don't. I just
see. But to
I
me,
can't
the
stand
total
it.
bases should count if you earned it, right?
Yeah, and they earned a walk.
If you earn a walk, you earn a walk. You earn the base.
Yeah, I can't stand. I cannot stand watching over 1.5 total bases to watch somebody go 1 for 3 with a single and 2 walks, and I lose.
Because here's the other thing: it counts towards on base percentage and OPS, and everybody measures everything by OPS now, right? So why are you not getting credit for the guy getting on base? Because if you take a run prop, you get the prop whether they got on first from a walk, an error, or like getting on from an error. I get not counting as a total base.
I get that, yes.
Right, getting on because of catcher's interference. I get that too. A balk, or a hit by. I guess hit by pitch should count because you earned it and you have the bruise to prove it. But I'm with you. Walk should count as is that maybe not I don't know how you differentiate an intentional walk.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a solution for it other than just counting walks like in the total base. Because I know I debated for opening day Austin Riley over 1.5 total bases, and I think for the article for underdog plays the day, I'm pretty sure that's what I included. He goes 0 for 2 with 3 walks and an RBI. I don't hit that, but luckily on another site I played fantasy points for Riley and I was able to hit it. Walks should count as total bases. I'm fully in that camp. So that's the least impressive thing that I saw because it hasn't changed. I know it's not going to change either, but I'm going to complain about it nonetheless.
No, that's fair. That's fair. My least favorite thing aside from the Rendon thing, because that was ugly. I would say I wanted to see Josiah Gray take what he figured out in spring training and bring it north. Like, yes, it was against the Braves. I get it. They're good offense, but he had like a 15-2 strikeout to walk ratio in spring training. And his stuff plus was great. And he had I think it was like a 1.6 something ERA in spring training. Obviously, not very many innings. It's against lighter, sometimes split squad teams, whatever. But it seemed like whatever he figured out in spring training did not make the trip north because they just sent bombs off of Josiah Gray. Just took him deep like every other batter. It was not great. So hopefully he gets that sorted out because I think there's still talent there to be a frontline starter, not an ace, but somebody in the top half of a rotation. And if he could just keep the ball in the dang park, I think he'd be just on track with what he should be doing. His forcing fastball, I just need to get away from it because it's not good. It's straight as a doornail, and it just gets teed off on.
I did profit against Josiah Gray, so I'm sorry to tell you that, but I and many other people profited. So
I mean, he gave up 3 homers and in 5 innings.
He's got to get the home runs under control.
And it's not like he's playing in a homer-friendly park. Like, Nats Park is a very fair park. It's one of the more neutral parks in baseball, to be honest, if you look at rolling averages for park factors. And it's just, I don't know. Spencer Strider picked up where he left off, too.
Yep, he sure did. But Matt, that's going to put a bow on this week's episode. So give Matt a follow at the Selzman on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Colby R. Conway. Hopefully we have some exciting news with the podcast coming out for you here in the coming days. We'll see what we can do with it there. But other than that, give us a follow on Twitter. Check out all of the great seasonal and daily content here at fantasyalarm.com. And we will see you next time with the newest edition of the Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Baseball Podcast.